boy. And of course, we all agree with that. And of course, this was really 1946, 1947, which was just a few years ago. They basically gave us a good view into how Harold would perform over a lifetime of science. You see his grades, he was an A, and then of course down there on the bottom, what did it say? Physical education, B. Now, is there anyone surprised by that? Well, first, someone, who says that participation awards were not given away just recently? See, Harold in 1946-47 got a basketball participation certificate. So what he promises that anyone who would like to play basketball tonight, he's willing to do a 2-on-2 with you. Of course, he also had the commentary, and if you notice, I'm capable of doing better spelling. Now anyone, and I'm sure all of us have gotten some type of a letter from Harold, really feel that the instructor was underestimating his abilities, because there really wasn't spelling he needed more help on. But of course, handwriting would have been more helpful too. But it still is most distinguished, most identifiable handwriting ever. Early in Harold's career, he had the opportunity of a lifetime to join the family firm. Many of you know that Southern Illinois and the Wilkins were like this. If you think a little bit of politics, a lot of cars, a lot of ownership, they own Southern Illinois. At least that's what Harold says. But of course, in every family, there's the black sheep. And Harold always talks about being the black sheep who didn't want to do anything with the business, but he wanted to go off and do something different. So he went down to Southern Illinois University and got his first degree, then went on to the University of Illinois, and of course went to a place that still can't decide what their mascot should be. He went down and he decided he was a Southerner, so he'd go to Florida. And of course he took one look at that mascot and looked at, why would you ever want to go to school where the mascot is an alligator? That just doesn't seem... So he decided to come to a much more friendly place and join the chipmunks, as they call them. Of course, they're not chipmunks, they're gophers. So anyway, so that's where Harold spent his academic career. And of course, he did a lot of interesting things while he was there. Mainly he was thinking. And thinking, Harold did a lot. Those with graduate students always would go out and have a little something to eat. And there was nothing like, after dinner, solving most of the world's problems. And Lord knows what problem he was trying to solve. But at the moment, it was the most important. Along the line, Harold did do some very spectacular work, and much of this work is actually, time does wonders because it allows everyone to repeat it. A lot of the work that Harold has done has been repeated again and again, but it's still to this day, it's the landmark work. The work on lilies, and of course we're fortunate to have W.C. Lind, who did some of that very early work with Harold here. And of course he broadened it from just the Lilium longiflorum, which he's best known to, did some of the Asiatic, but of course he always believed in the axiom that you can take the plant out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the plant. And that's driven a pedigree of graduate school. In fact, one of the big questions is, what is your academic pedigree? And if you look at most of the major research that's been done, what would you say in the last 30 years, it's been done out of Harold's pedigree, who basically revolve around this whole axiom of you can't take the country out of the plant. Of course, he expanded into his work with Alsmeria and Fresius, and basically that came to the end of a lot of his bulb work, where he basically was the leader in the world of bulbs and interesting crops. But he did a lot more in bulbs than just look at flowering. He always asked the question, what's causing this to happen? Why do we have tulips that stretch at the top? Why do we have daffodils? How do we do height control? So his work was not limited to just flowering, but a large amount of different chemicals. As a person who could never sit still, basically it got bored and he started pondering the new problems facing the industry. And one of the big problems in the 70s, of course, was branching. How do we increase lateral branching in plants? How do we get more of these? Even to this day, it's a landmark piece of work where you take a look at chrysanthemums and you say, is all we have are 2 branches. But the real question is how do we get more? Because the question that was put before Harold and all the researchers in the U.S. is, how do we get more poinsettia cuttings in a very narrow period of time because there could never be enough stock plants producing enough cutting to satisfy the demand. So Harold completely changed his research to look at probably the most landmark work that he's done, which was the work that he did on lateral branching, where he took this ray-take collection of poinsettias and really systematized the whole branching habit, the branching patterns, and actually looked at it completely different. Because the one thing we all know is Harold never looked at stuff the normal way. In fact, he usually looked at it the wrong way, upside down way, or in this case, sideways. And of course, redefined how we grow stock plants pretty much rolled over. Then he saw the light. And it's interesting now that we're going back to LEDs that a lot of the early work, as I was putting this together, I realized we did that. And we did that back 35 years ago. But Harold basically defined the whole area of light quality, light quantity, and duration when he did some of his work showing by just changing the light quality, you can change the expression. Reminded everyone that we live in the far north and that things happen in the far north that don't happen in the far south just because of this massive swing of photoperiod that we deal with. And of course, the whole when do we light, the kind light quality, and how we change the overall plant. Define the whole area of light quality in floriculture, reminding people that light quality plays a big role in branching. And here's some of the early work on fiber optics and LEDs on branching and flowering. So Harold really was way ahead of his time in many ways, and also led a lot of people to new ideas. Always pondering the question, why? Remember him standing there looking at this particular Stephanotis branching and said, why are all the flowers in the middle? And we spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out why were all the flowers in the middle, which led to some interesting studies. If you ever wondered where DIF came from, it came from a study Harold had us set up that basically looked at dropping the temperature during the day and night to 5 degrees to see what would happen. Of course, we thought it was faulty equipment because the growth chambers shook and shook and shook. We thought they were short because they were shook, but they weren't short because they shook. They were short because of the temperatures in the studies that we did. We saw some very interesting temperature. Of course, there's no senior faculty member who's complete who hasn't gone and written a book. And I don't think this really constitutes a book. It's more along the line of a massive tome. And of course, if you don't do it once right, John, you do it twice. So, and of course, I think John Noel agrees, is this the last version then? But he basically compiled a lifetime of study of flowering and floriculture and put it together as basically as a memoir to Harold and his works. But really, when Harold was done with the research at the university, he went on to the commercial world. And of course, in the commercial world, there's no better symbiotic relationship than that with Jack and Nurseryman's Exchange and Harold Wilkins, where they basically traveled the world looking for something interesting. We all saw basically water and some plants. Harold would find interesting things that we need to look at, and he always found something that he found to be quite beautiful, quite interesting, and always exciting to the commercial world. But of course, the reason he did that was travel. At a very early age, you can see him sitting on the bumper of his father's car, getting ready for his first trip, which of course took him out to see the far reaches of America. And then of course, every kid needs a pony. And so Harold, this is his pony when he went out west as his first celebration of where can he go, what could he see along the way. And of course, over the world, many of you have traveled with Harold. How many people have gone on a trip with Harold? How many found that to be the most interesting? Well, let's keep going. You're traveling from the Middle East all the way to the topless mountains around the world. So Harold's been there, done that, and has seen everything. And of course, it's the friendships, the people that he's met along the way that make all the difference. But of course, what story of Harold is can be complete if you don't tell about his love of the sea? Ever since a young boy, when he caught his first fish in southern Illinois. Yes, this is a native fish in southern Illinois. And do you know who caught it? Notice the cat. Can you see the cat? They chased it. Anyway, so that's on Harold's fishing story. But when he thinks of the sea, he always thought of the great open expanse You know, he saw the great schooners of in Holland, but realized he was too cheap to buy the big one. So he thought, well, let's see about something a little bit smaller. And in his midlife career, he likes to refer to it as his crisis, he bought the Blue Goose. How many of us had the adventure of a Blue Goose trip? And of course, the Blue Goose was, if you notice it down here in the foreground, it wasn't one of those in the background. The one in the foreground, what it was a husband and wife who retired. And he was a welder, and he welded a boat, and then took it up to put it into the Mississippi, and they went down the Mississippi. And of course, you just couldn't do it on a welded boat. You had to take a camper top and put it on it. So it was a camper top on a giant chunk of welded steel, and they took the boats down the Mississippi, down along the Gulf, down around the Florida Keys, and up along the Intercoastal Waterway to the St. Lawrence Seaway, and they came back through the Great Lakes, and they got to Duluth, and they put it onto a trailer, and they brought it down to Forest Lake, and they dumped it at a marina, and put for sale cheap, which of course was Harold's price. Now anyone that went on there, I was talking to Mary, and she says, I don't really remember doing this. And everyone said, oh, you had to remember. And then you said, remember the engine that wouldn't? Well, this was the experience, I think everyone, including Don Rosacker, who the only time I've ever seen Don confused was Don standing there going, fuel, air, spark. Fuel, air, spark. So in 2 years, I think the boat had 100 hours on it maximum, because it was always being trying to get it to work. It never did. But that was a great experience with Harold in his yachting career. But probably his love of his life is design. So at a very early age, as you can see, one of his first designs with his pet dog. Can you see the lovely single? He has a little tulip in a bottle. Can you see it over there on the left? And of course, knowing his florist career was couldn't be right without funeral work. There is his funeral tribute to his pet duck that died over here on the right. And of course, then he wanted to expand his opportunity, so he went into some landscaping in their new home. And I think you can see down here the nice collection of shrubs down here on the bottom. So Harold basically, at a very early life, looked at his opportunities for design, and I think we all agree that academia was a good place for him. Because then he went to later career, he said, let's try it again. And of course, you've all been out to the farm. I'm sure if you haven't, by all means, and you can see that he's brought a tremendous amount of joy, both to himself and to others, not only through a lifetime of research, but also in his current life, selling flowers to anyone who will come by and take a look on the weekend. So, Harold, happy birthday. For 80 great years as our friend, our mentor, and do you want to say a word here? Of course.
This is better than a wake.
Are you sure this isn't?
And there is one person that should be recognized here. You saw that I could not write. And 2 volumes of the book was handwritten. And when John Dole stand up, he read my handwriting, 4,000 some odd pages, typed it, and then sent it back to me to correct it. Anyway, you wouldn't believe how many times you would correct and whatever. But John, I appreciate you reading my writing and putting the book together. There's so many other people here that another person I'm smiling over here, Peggy Weinheimer, she and her husband were very good friends. They moved to California, and he was a plant breeder. They collected books and so forth and so on. And we had several other students trying to find where on earth happened to Holly and to her husband Bill. And about a year ago, Thank you, Mr. Computer, or Ms. Computer, whatever. Polly arrived, and here we haven't seen one another in 30 years, and she's still as much fun. And anyway, thank you for coming all the way from California to help celebrate this. Polly, we really appreciate it. And on and on this. So, and Don Rosacker was the first time I had dinner at night was at his house with his family, and that's only been 10 years ago. Anyway, there's so many other places and so forth and so on. Well, the last person who has been, how on earth he's really put up with me is my partner, Brian Jeffrey. And anyway, I have a very short, things have to go in with this. Anyway, we made it on time, and all went well, Brian. Thank you very, very much, Brian. And all of you talk and visit and enjoy and eat lots of cake and so forth and so on. Thank you, Will, for saving all of that.
So maybe I can have Rachel come up here, and she'll tell you a little bit about our musical entertainment.
So formal, wow. All right. My name is Rachel, and I'm just representing the band that will be playing for us tonight, or today. Happy birthday, Harold. This is the Uncle Harold Fun Time, Old Time Band. I don't know if we'll get a chance to introduce everybody that will be playing, but we have just some amazing instruments that will be up here. We have mandolin, we have a very old fiddle or violin that one of our players, Sylvia, has had from her great-grandfather from Ireland, even though it's a German violin. And then we also have a banjo that is made from wood that is 14,000 years old, custom made. So we really have a very exciting bunch of music to play. We're just kind of background music, so please feel free to listen, sing songs if you recognize some of the music, and talk amongst yourselves. We'll need about 10 minutes to set up, and we'll be playing for a couple hours. Thanks.